In the 70s, after Star Wars became a massive hit, Hollywood started putting just about everything in space. And while that specifically wasn't necessarily a bad thing, it was indicative of Hollywood's mindset. It believed that people liked genres instead of stories. But we, as entertainment seekers, are most entertained by stories, by tales. That's, after all, what movies, television is all about. And the same thing is true for professional wrestling. And with that being said, we have just a small list of 5 mere concepts that would make a huge difference in the world of professional wrestling storytelling. And that's what we're here to discuss, because today, don't get me wrong, in recent years we have gotten some fantastic stories, such as Sami Zayn wanting to be an honorary Uce, only to find that he couldn't completely turn and portray his best friend Kevin Owens. Although that is just one particular storyline, and there are a whole bunch of plot concepts or plot devices, if you will, that allow for a variety of stories that just aren't being told in WWE anymore. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start that list now. Alright, so one of the first concepts I want to bring up is the idea of treating pro wrestling like a legitimate sport. Now, don't start going off on how much you hate sports entertainment or whatever like that. I'm just trying to say that this creates a lot of storytelling opportunities. It opens a lot of doors. How so, you might ask? Well, when it comes to sports, if pro wrestling was treated like amateur wrestling or a legitimate sport, it would have rules and regulations, and rules were made to be broken. It's like the Prime Directive in Star Trek. The only reason you ever bring up the Prime Directive is to talk about how you're about to break the Prime Directive. And in terms of pro wrestling, there was a time and a place where wrestling was treated like a sport, where you were trying to beat your opponent, but you weren't trying to cause undue harm. But anyway, if you stop to look how ridiculous pro wrestling is in comparison to amateur wrestling, you'll start noticing what I'm talking about. Because let's look at any other combat sport. If this was boxing and you took your opponent and threw him over the top rope, the match would instantly be thrown out. Let alone if you started slamming his head against the commentary table. And no, I'm not advocating for the Bill Watts rule of no over the top. Of course there has to be some over the top theatrics when it comes to pro wrestling. But what I am getting at here is that if we treat pro wrestling like more of a contest between two individuals who are trying to out-grapple each other without causing serious injury, then we have the option to really tell a story of somebody who is trying to cause serious injury. Another and better example would be the Ring of Honor handshake. If every match is supposed to start with 2 wrestlers shaking hands to show respect, and one wrestler completely denies it, well then we know that wrestler is violating the code of conduct and therefore is a heel. And so, if we treat pro wrestling more like a legitimate contest where 2 wrestlers are trying to out-grapple one another, well then if you go ahead and do something that seems extreme, then you instantaneously help to get that guy over as a major heel. But it only works if all these shenanigans are a rarity rather than being the norm. Like, have you noticed that almost every match has wrestlers going to the outside? What's up with that? Oh, and by the way, with this list, I'm not trying to say that all these things must happen or even should happen. I'm just saying that if they were to be employed, you would get a lot of doors open for you. Okay, so next, let's move into the opposite direction this time. Let's go with the extreme kayfabe of it all, as I'm talking about having a case of gold fever. Now, in the modern era, we've seen this most commonly in NXT with the likes of Bo Dallas and Tommaso Ciampa, where a wrestler becomes completely obsessed with holding on to their title. And I don't mean that they just want to keep it or that they're willing to cheat to win, but I mean someone who has a unhealthy fixation on being the champ. If you have a wrestler go all Gollum by holding on to a belt, then you give him so much creative potential. For one thing, you could start with a wrestler being a babyface when he wins the title, only to be slowly driven mad by his fixation on it, which then turns him heel, and this allows for him to turn on all of his friends and get a whole bunch of new opponents, or even reinvent himself entirely as a completely different character. And I especially love this because it was one of the driving forces behind Omega Powers exploding, which I think is one of the best storylines, if not the best storyline of all time. And also, like with Randy Savage, this could also lead to a redemption arc, which is another great storyline that you could tell. Or you could just have the wrestler be a heel the entire time, but his obsession with the gold only drives up his negative traits. He can be even more paranoid, he can be even more egotistical, or he can be even more despicable with all of his awful acts. The idea of a wrestler being so crazy that they become in love with a physical object, or they just become in love with the idea of themselves being champion, is something you can play with, and creatively, We definitely should. A big Patreon shout out to Dakari Garmin, Ron Hawthorne, Meiji Stray, and Harry Flynn, as well as to the rest of the amazing Patreon supporters out there. Thank all of you for believing in me and for keeping this channel going. Yet again, let's go ahead with Randy Savage, as in the 1992 Royal Rumble, he was so mad at Jake the Snake Roberts that he eliminated himself in order to go after him. Now, of course, it was ruled that Macho Man was allowed to re-enter the Royal Rumble, but as Gorilla Monsoon said on commentary, this is what happens when your heart takes over your head. Now, the reason why we haven't seen this so much in modern times is somewhere down the line, Vince McMahon came up with the idea that nobody shouldn't want to win. Nobody shouldn't want to win the WWE Championship. That should be every wrestler's primary goal. And with that, the kayfabe reasoning of a wrestler not caring if they get disqualified as long as they get their revenge, or a wrestler not caring about the title as they're just looking for a fight, went right out the window. But with those examples plus many more, you cut out a lot of storyline opportunities. Now look, I do get the idea of putting the title on a pedestal, and I also am an advocate for the will to win in wrestling. But yet again, I'm just saying that if we didn't adhere to those strict rulings, it would give us a lot of options in the writer's room. Do you remember towards the beginning of the women's revolution where it seemed like every female wrestler had a best friend? And that was before the women's tag team titles. And while this was done ad nauseum with the women, it seems like this lately has been lacking for the men. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn? Well, quite frankly, that relationship has been milked for all that it's worth. But the reason why it works so well is because we genuinely bought into this friendship. And this frenemies relationship wouldn't be taxed so heavily if there was just more of it to go around. With any friendship in professional wrestling, you have a lot of options. They could get together to form a tag team, they could betray one another and have a heated rivalry. One could be used as a hostage while the other one has to save them. The sky's the limit. The point of the matter is, as long as we, the audience, believe that these two are emotionally invested in each other, we will be emotionally invested ourselves. And for that matter, we need two wrestlers whose friendship itself is what we care about. So I'm not just talking about two guys who are in a tag team who may or may not be friends, I'm talking about two people that actually have a real friendship that we as the audience can feel. And one of the setbacks to this is in a lot of cases we have two wrestlers who actually are friends in real life, but we wouldn't know that because their relationship isn't explored on screen. And look, I know talking about exploring personal relationships on camera for a bunch of professional wrestlers is not exactly intuitive, but it does matter, as weird as it might seem for a show about two people fighting each other. I mean, let's just look at Luger and Sting, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, CM Punk and Colt Cabana? Whether it's real or not, if we have two wrestlers that have a friendship that we truly do believe in, then we're going to want to see what happens with it next, whether they split apart or reconcile or do something completely different. The point of the matter is, friendship is where it's at. But suffice to say, I don't know if you've noticed, but it seems like in the men's division, we don't really have any right now. Kevin Owens is on the shelf, Tommaso Ciampa left, and Sting and Luger are retired. But also, WWE seems to be more highly invested in their main event talent being loners ever since the whole Stone Cold thing. So while Cody and Punk and Cena are all friendly with each other, it's not like we believe them to be real, genuine friends, whether they are or not. And so it's something that you might not have noticed right now, but we do have a lack of friends in WWE. Now, I talked about this a few years ago in my video about melodrama, where I talked about one of its biggest virtues, the struggle between the rich and the poor. The haves versus the have-nots is one of the easiest and most classic examples of a rivalry in professional wrestling, but for whatever reason, in recent times, it seems like less of a thing. After all, back in the day, who could forget the son of the plumber going against a wheelin', dealin', jet-flying Ric Flair, or a roughneck Stone Cold Steve Austin going against his rich boss, Mr. McMahon? Class wars are just an easy and classic strategy to tell a story, especially because so many people can relate to it, and well, they do naturally go against each other as polar opposites. Furthermore, you can have a lot of allegory and have a lot to say about society when you do storylines like this. However, WWE isn't alone on this, as the billionaire Tony Khan has missed some opportunities over in AEW, as I think there were a lot of storylines that could have really worked if they had this approach, such as the rich champion MJF going against the rough and rugged Mark Briscoe Briscoe, or the man of the people himself, Eddie Kingston. Not to mention a bunch of other storylines that could all happen as long as we remember that the class struggle is real. Well, there you go. Just some overall concepts that I think would give you some options when it came to writing wrestling. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters, and thank you for watching. And as always, Dave knows.